Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing one of my favorite videos, and that is the reading wrap up for the month of July 2023. So I will be going through the 18 books that I read this month, primarily in the mystery and thriller genre, and giving you my thoughts on them. Let's hop into book one because there's lots to get through. So many books here, I don't even know which one to start with. Let's start with a hit because I definitely had more average reads this month, but this one was a favorite. That is Misfortune Cookie by Vivien Chien. This is book 9 within the Needle Shop Mystery series. It just came out in June and I was waiting for this so excitedly. It's one of my most anticipated releases for the year. I'll link the full video above if you want to check out my recent anticipated releases for the year, for the second half of the year. But this one involves our main character, Lana Lee. She works at her family's needle shop in this place called Asia Village, which has all these different Asian establishments like a spa, there's a bar, there's a bookshop, there's a donut shop, etc. But in this book, she and her older sister Anna May, who is very rigid, and Lana's a little bit more free-spirited, she's a little bit more, kind of just go with the flow, and I can relate to Anna May a little bit more because she's definitely very type A. But they actually go out to California for this like restaurant convention and to stay with their Aunt Grace, who's this very Americanized, and she doesn't have like any kids. She's very like kind of luxurious and everything and very fun, and I am begging the author, please bring Aunt Grace back in future books. I loved Aunt Grace, and I also want to see Aunt Grace and Lana and Anna's mother, like her sister. I want to see the two of them in the same room because like Lana and Anna, they seem to have like, they're different personalities, so they would kind of clash, and this was just fun. Basically somebody that Aunt Grace knew from like her work as she's like a journalist, somebody she knew is mysteriously killed. At first it might be an accident, but she suspects it's not an accident because of some of the things that were happening before her friend's death. So she gets Lana to help her solve the case, and Anna actually gets involved in the case too. Normally she's very against it, doesn't help at all, but this time the sisters actually work together a little bit, which I thought was really nice. I love this, and it was really fun to be out of Cleveland, Ohio and in California just for a change of pace. But I am looking forward to going back to Asia Village, and I don't that this book has been read and it just came out. I don't know when book 10 is coming out. I'm assuming next year probably, so that means I have to wait a year, which I'm really sad about, but it was really good. A 5-star read, easy, enjoyed it. A book that I didn't love as much as I thought I would is The Half-Sister by Sandie Jones. This is my third Sandie Jones thriller. I've read The Other Woman and I've read The First Mistake, and I thought both were really good, especially The First Mistake. That was excellent, but The Other Woman was also really solid, really exciting, really like heart pacing, like heart fun, like your heart's just like racing when you're reading it. This one, basically we have two sisters. They're kind of, they get together with their mother to like have like these lunches and stuff, but they're not really close. They have pretty different lives, different personalities, and they kind of always are looking at the other one as kind of like the grass is greener on the other side. And basically one time they're at this lunch with their mother, and like at her house or something, and this lady shows up at the door and she claims to be their half sister, which would imply that like probably their dad had a kid, right? So it's just like their whole world kind of blows up because their father had died a year before this, and they're thinking, there's no way for this, like they can't ask him questions. So they start to dig into it. One of the sisters is very adamant, there's no way, like my father's amazing, and then the other one is like had a little bit more of a stressful relationship with the father, and it's like, well, what other answer is there? It's very interesting. I called the ending very early, so that took away a little bit of the suspense, but it was still satisfying. I just wish the ending had a little more depth. I feel like it left a few things unexplained, and I just wanted it to be a little bit extended. It felt very short. I wanted a little bit more from that, but overall the characters in this were really good. I really found myself sympathizing with both sisters, even though at the beginning I feel like you're kind of like expected to sympathize with one over the other more, but I feel like you end up really sympathizing with both of them. I feel like Sandie Jones does a really great job with her characters. I'm still looking forward to more Sandie Jones. This one just wasn't my favorite of the ones I've read from her. Alright, let's do another hit, and that is Fatal Fudge Swirl by Meri Allen. This is the third book in the Ice Cream Shop mystery series. I will link, I did Summerween this month, and I will link my Summerween playlist above. I did 3 different vlogs for it. I read a bunch of these books and that gave my like thoughts that I was reading through them, and I definitely read this one for Summerween because it takes place during Halloween. Look at this cover. I this has got to be like, it's up there for one of my favorite cozy mystery covers. I just love the colors, everything about this. Basically, we have our main character, Riley Rhodes. She's like a food blogger. She's an ex-librarian from the CIA, and now she's working at her friend's ice cream shop in Penniman, Connecticut. And it's just... the scenery is beautiful. This is a Halloween cozy mystery. There's a Halloween themed wedding taking place. There's a Halloween festival. The ice cream shop is making Halloween flavors. Riley ends up actually working at this nearby bed and breakfast where the Halloween wedding is taking place because somebody she knows, they really need help. They're like, hey, can you come in? And so that kind of gives her some access to clues and asking people questions and stuff. I loved this. This is probably my favorite of the 3 books so far, and I've loved the other books in the series. But yeah, 5 stars, easy. This is becoming one of my favorite cozy mystery series. I just love it. I love it. The theme is great. The characters are great. I love the writing style. I feel like the pacing is always really consistent. I feel like the mysteries are really well thought out. And what's not to love about ice cream? The Halloween wedding. I love it. I absolutely love all of the themes that this one had. It was so much fun. This book hurts my head. The more I think about it, the more confused I get. I ended up skimming the second half, if I'm being completely honest, so it wasn't like a DNF, but I definitely skimmed the second half, and that is The Spare Room by Andrea Bartz. So I read The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, her sister, earlier this year, and I liked it, but it was definitely very graphic. Now, I know these are both thrillers. I didn't expect it to be like, super cozy, cute, or whatever, but it was graphic. It was graphic, but I liked the overall theme. I liked the plot line for that one. I liked the characters more. This one, I'm just like, what did I just read? Please let me know if you've read this. I said this when I was talking about this book initially, that maybe I'm not the target audience, because it is described as supposed to be like kind of like steamy and stuff, which just isn't my taste, but I was like, you know what, I can skip through a few pages if that's the case, because the plot sounded interesting. Basically, the general plot for this is we have our main character, Kelly. She's down on her luck. She's like between jobs, and she's having issues with her boyfriend, and she needs like a place to crash. Well, she recently kind of reconnected with this old school friend named Sabrina. Sabrina and her husband, Nathan, they have this huge house, which you can kind of see here on the cover. Very luxurious. They have tons of space, and basically everyone is like, it's like lockdown, like a couple years ago, all that, unfortunately. So everything is locking down, and Kelly really needs somewhere to crash because she's like, I can't be in lockdown with my boyfriend, but I have nowhere else to go. So her friend offers to let her stay. She's like, look, we have a spare room, and we have plenty of space. We'd love the company, we can all lock down together. Okay, great. I'm like, okay. And I like the general plot too, is that during her stay, Kelly discovers that the previous guest in the spare room, a young woman like herself, disappeared. Nobody knows where she is. So basically Kelly gets there, and she ends up falling in love with both her friend and her friend's husband. And they all start like a relationship together, which I'm not a big romance reader, not my forte. But okay, great, cool. And while she's in this relationship, she starts to pick up on clues that there was this other woman. So she starts to kind of freak out and be like, can I trust them? But she's isolated, she's alone with them, not a great setup. So there's definitely some tension building. But I feel like the mystery and thriller part was kind of an afterthought. I feel like this was almost more of this excuse to have a very romantic, heavy book. A very toxic romantic relationship, if I might note. I don't know. I just didn't really enjoy it. I got halfway through it, and I wanted to know what happened to the previous the previous guest. I wanted to know what happened, so I did end up skimming through it really fast. And then the ending I found to be just crazy. I felt like it was just what? There is no way. Come on. I did not like the ending. The explanation for what happened and everything made sense. That was fine. But how the characters responded, when Kelly, puts it together and stuff, I was kind of like, really? That's your what? That's not your, how can that be your response? I don't know. It's not my favorite. A book that I loved this even more than book 1, and I really liked book 1, and that is Murder is a Piece of Cake, a Baker Street mystery by Valerie Burns. This is book 2 within the Baker Street mystery series, and I liked book 1. Book 1 was like a solid 3.5 stars. It was good. I was excited. This was a most anticipated release for me. This knocked its socks off. I was so impressed. I really loved this. It's also very short. It's like 250 some pages with the recipes included. But I just loved this. I flew through this. This just was everything that I wanted. Basically, we have our main character, Maddie, and she, in the first book, comes out to Southwest Michigan, and she has to run her great aunt Octavia's bakery, take care of her great aunt Octavia's Mastiff baby, and live in her home because her great aunt Octavia has passed away, but she has a stipulation in her will that she's left all these things to Maddie, but she has to take care of the bakery at least for a year. Maddie's not thrilled about this in book 1 because she's used to like a big city life. She's like a social media manager, but she's like, okay, maybe I need a change of pace. She's recently been dumped by her fiance, classic cozy mystery trope. So in book 2 now, she's getting a little more into an element. She's learning more about cooking because she doesn't know how to cook or bake very well, which hinders her ability to run a bakery, even though she has like her employees and stuff who can help, of course. But she's beginning to fall in love more with Baby the Mastiff, who had his own little subplot in this, which I thought was darling. And she's getting, you know, she's becoming like friendly with more people. She's really coming into her own, and I love it. I love it so, so much. And then tragedy strikes because this like big bad guy comes into town, and he's like, I'm gonna open a bakery and like crush your bakery. And they like kind of bet on who will win the baking competition, and one of them will close their bakery based on the baking competition. Well, before the competition can happen, the guy is found dead. So craziness ensues, and Maddie is again one of the suspects, along with some of the people in her life that she cares about. She's got to clear their name. I loved this. I also loved learning more about one of her friends, April. I just love April's story. I'm excited for more. I love this. I just love it. The writing style is just so charming. It just was so easy to fly through this. I just love it. I feel like the dialogue in this is really a strong point. I feel like the author does a great job with the dialogue. It just feels very natural. It flows very well. Sometimes cozy mystery dialogue, it can get a little too punny or a little bit too much for me, where it's like, okay, nobody would actually talk like that, you know? This, it's just like the perfect amount. I love it. I can't wait for more. There's always delicious scenes with the yummy, you know, cakes and stuff that are going on. And this one we have some pie, and Baby's becoming one of my favorite like dog characters in cozy mysteries. I feel like the dogs sometimes don't get as much character as like cats do. I definitely can think of more cats that I'm excited about than dogs in cozies, and this one was a good one. Speaking of cats, I had to return the second book in the series, Ashes to Ashes, Crust to Crust, which is what I read this month, but this is book 1. I'll hold this up as a reference. You can see Butterball the cat here. This is the series by Mindy Quigley. It is the deep dish mystery series, as in deep dish pizza. I love pizza. Oh my goodness. So I read the second book in the series, Ashes to Ashes, Crust to Crust, this month. I was so excited. I was on the waiting list. I was like, come on, I need this. So good. So good. I loved book 1, but again, book 2 nailed it. It was so incredible. Basically, we have our main character, Delilah O'Leary, and Delilah has opened a deep dish pizzeria in Geneva Bay, Wisconsin, which has a mob history, which has some interesting touches on our plot lines sometimes, and I really like that. And she has opened this pizzeria in the first book. You know, the second book, she, you know, it's kind of a slow season, and she's looking to drum up some more money, and she's really wanting to win this food competition in the area because it'll get her like a magazine feature for her restaurant, and just a lot of, you know, a lot of people knowing more about her restaurant. It can really make or break her business. So she's really excited for this. However, her ex-fiance Sam has recently started dating the juice bar owner, who's also going to be competing in the same competition. And the juice bar owner, Jordan, one of her employees, is actually like a suspect, like because there's somebody who dies in their juice bar after drinking one of their juices, which is obviously tragic, and the juice bar is under investigation, and Delilah gets involved in it. And it's just the final like clue that put together the aha moment for that book was so clever. I was so impressed. I thought it was such an amazing clue. I wish I could like tell you, but of course I'm not going to tell you. But if you read it and you know, I thought it was so clever. I had never, like, I just thought it was such a good clue. I was like, wow, that was an amazing like that was a really amazing, like, final aha moment. The ending for this was so exciting. It was so well put together. It was so satisfying on so many levels. Yeah, can't wait. I can't wait. So, highly recommend this series. I'm enjoying it so much. Book 3 is coming out later this year. It's called, like, Public Anchovy #1. I'm so excited for it. So, another one that's rapidly becoming a favorite series of mine. So this book I just finished yesterday, and I finished it all within the same afternoon. It was like a Friday night. I started reading it late Friday afternoon. I just needed to like unwind after the work week, and then I read it some more after dinner, and wow. I mean, it's a pretty short one. It is under 300 pages, and this is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. So Rachel Hawkins is pretty popular on BookTube. I've seen some of her books really pushed around a lot. I've never read her before, and this one just screamed to me like a good summer vibe. I mean, with like all this lemon wallpaper, it just screams summer to me. So I thought this would be a good one to start with. Let's give it a shot. I'm still like processing parts of this, but I'm going to give it like a 3.5 stars. So basically we have two timelines that we're following. We have, in present day time, we have Rachel and her friend Chess, which is like a nickname for Jessica. The two of them have been inseparable since childhood, and they're now living very different lives in their 30s. So Chess is very successful. She's like a very successful author. She's rich. She's like fabulously wealthy. As there's always a character like that in a thriller, right? And then Rachel's kind of down on her luck. She's suffering from the impacts of like a divorce that's trying to go through, and she's had health issues, and she's struggling with her work and her career. She's not like in a good place, right? Everything's kind of going wrong. Well, Chess and her have lunch, and then shortly after, Chess is like, hey, we don't get together enough. Let's go to this villa in Italy. I'll pay for it. Let's, you know, and we can both, they're both writers. She's like, we can both write our books there. We can go on adventures together. We can catch up. Like, it'll be great. And I mean, it's kind of hard to say no to that, right? Like, wow. Well, they get there and they realize, like Emily puts it together beforehand, this is actually like kind of like a murder villa, because in the 1974 there was this like group of very young like rock stars and like their groupies who were there, and somebody died in a very like tragic way, and it's kind of has that reputation hanging over it. It's been renamed. It's become kind of a spectacle place because of that, and it's still open for vacations, but she's like, okay, whatever, you know, rock stars, like they're always doing crazy things, like this was just a one-off thing, you know, whatever. Well, she gets there and she becomes like really obsessed with the story, and you're going back and forth between the timeline from 1974 from one person's perspective, and I loved reading. I loved her perspective. I loved reading from the past. And I want to say, I'm going to read this so that I don't get it wrong. This is inspired by Fleetwood Mac, the Manson murders, and the infamous summer Percy and Mary Shelley spent with Lord Byron at a Lake Geneva castle, which is the birthplace of Frankenstein. This, I'm going to say, is, I don't know if this is really a classic thriller. To me, this was more of like a very dramatic suspense tale. I don't know if I would really call this like a super fast-paced thriller by any means, but you'll become so fascinated with the characters. I became really fascinated with the characters. I wanted to know what happened in the villa in the 1974 version. I wanted to know what was going to happen now. I wanted to know more about this like strange friendship between Emily and Chess and how they've evolved over the years. Are they really good friends still? We're going to find out. I became so interested in this. It's just fascinating. So even if it wasn't quite the thriller I expected, I still really enjoyed this. I loved the focus on female artists in this, because you have in the present day two female writers, who, you know, Emily and Chess, who are there, and then with the like groupies and rock star people, you also have two women who are there, and even though they're not really taken seriously by the male like rock stars there, they are actually artists as well, like, or they're, you know, they're learning their craft and stuff. They're very young, and I just loved it. One of the books that I DNF'd this month was 15 Minutes of Flame by Christin Brecher, a Nantucket candlemaker mystery. This was one I picked for my summer Ween prompt, because it was like a nice like autumny book here. It had orange on the cover. I just didn't connect with the writing style. I don't think there's anything like wrong with, I don't want to say there's anything wrong with any book, but there wasn't like anything objectively that I could put my finger on. I just didn't really like the writing style. I kind of felt bored. I was like halfway through the book and I was like, I'm just like sluggish through this. I'm dragging myself through this. I'm not that interested. I just wasn't super impressed. I did love Tucker, the little tuxedo cat here, beautiful. I loved the setting. I liked learning more about the history because there's like a cold case they're trying to solve in this, so I thought that was interesting. The setting was beautiful, but the characters and like the actual mystery plot didn't interest me, so I DNF'd it. Not my favorite. So a thriller that I did love was She Started It by Sian Gilbert. This was one of my most anticipated thriller releases. I'll link that video above. The picture here because I have returned this. This was like an excellent summer thriller. It's described as like a very hot, twisty summer resort thriller. Basically, you have 4 friends who are invited to go on this like extravagant, all expenses paid, luxury like bachelorette trip to like an island, and like all expenses paid, awesome resort, right? But they're really confused because the person who's inviting them was somebody they weren't really friends with. In fact, they actually were kind of like, they kind of bullied this person, so they're kind of confused, but they're like, you know what, maybe she's put things aside, maybe we can put things aside and mostly just kind of go to enjoy this free trip. Well, they show up and it's just the 5 of them, so just the bride-to-be and the 4 friends, and you're going back and forth between like journal entries from the past, and then you're going in like the present day. And some extreme things start to really happen while they're at the resort, like things start to disappear, there's some like weird incidents, like it's really creepy. It's really good. This was kind of described as like, and then there were none meets The Lord of the Flies. I feel like there's definitely something to that description. I thought that was pretty good. I liked learning about all the characters. This is definitely a thriller. Kind of reminds me of Lucy Foley, where most of the characters are pretty deeply unlikable. So if you're somebody who wants someone to root for, probably not the thriller for you. But if you don't mind it, if you are there for like a reality TV-esque, like almost Survivor-esque kind of bachelorette party where everyone is there on this island, isolated, and there's a lot of danger, and it's definitely very fast-paced, very scary danger, this is a good read. I really enjoyed it. On the other hand, another thriller that I had read this month, I put thriller in quotations because this is not a thriller. I strongly believe this is not a thriller, was The Good Ones by Polly Stewart. I did talk about this in one of my vlogs, which I'll link above for you, but we have this character who is coming back to her hometown, a very small town, and when she was younger, basically one of her friends like disappears. You know, she just disappears in the middle of the night. There's like some blood, there's like a few little signs of maybe a struggle or something, but there's not a lot, and the police have not been able to figure it out, and it's been years. She returns home and she's kind of surprised because people don't really seem interested in the case anymore, even though she bumps into the person's like, you know, husband and like just people who would have cared about her. People have really moved on and she hasn't. This story was written beautifully. The writing in this, the style of it, absolutely gorgeous. Like you could just see everything so well when it, like everything was so visually descriptive and lovely. But this was much more of a coming of age story to me than it was a thriller. There really was no like fast-paced, like heart-pounding moments in this. It was very much like we're like uncovering her grief. We're going back in time to flashbacks of her and the friend that has disappeared when they were younger, before her disappearance. And I also don't really understand her obsession with the person who's disappeared, because in the flashbacks at least, I mean, they're like kind of friendly, but they're not like best friends. They're not, I don't know, like they don't really seem like they're that close. So I don't really understand why she's so obsessed with I don't know, like I just didn't love it. I felt like the ending was pretty predictable, and it didn't give closure for a lot of the characters who we had really gone in depth with throughout the book, which kind of irritated me. So I didn't like that we didn't get closure for a lot of the characters. I just felt like it just wasn't a thriller. It was more of this like coming to age combined with a cold case, but not like a thriller, you know. There wasn't like that danger element. So it was, if you like a coming of age story, you might like this. If you like really beautiful flowy writing, you might like this. But if you're looking for like a classic thriller, page turning, this wasn't it for me. A cozy I just finished is Pampered to Death by Levine. This is book 10 in the Jane Austen mystery series. And it's just, you know, it's always good. Like this is just a consistent series. We have Jane's cat named Prozac here on the cover. This is a very comedy heavy series. Levine is a comedy writer, so she has that background and it shows in her writing. It's hilarious. Like truly, it's very rare that I will laugh out loud at a book. I will laugh out loud almost always with her books. They're hilarious. So basically, Jane Austen is a freelance writer living in the big city, and in this particular book, her friend Lance wants to thank her for something she did for him in the last book, and he offers to send her and her cat Prozac to this like luxury spa. Well, she shows up and she realizes this is actually like a diet spa, which I don't love the setting for this, I'll just say that. And I don't love how she ends up there. But she's there and she's like, okay, well, you know, I'm here, like, you know, it's paid for, I don't want to waste it. And while she's there, like, somebody dies. There's like some celebrities and stuff there. There's some other people like Jane who are kind of like everyday people. It's an interesting mix. And I read this primarily for the humor. She's very self-deprecating with her humor. She's very just punny, very funny, just hilarious. It's just hilarious writing. It kind of mocks everything about life. So keep that in mind. It's not, I don't think it's supposed to be taken seriously in any fashion. It's just very funny, and her cat has so much time in this book, like so many highlight moments. I absolutely adored that. You'll also read Jane's parents. They're always emailing her in the books, and they'll be going back and forth telling their version of like these interesting events in their life, and it's just hilarious. Her dad is always getting into trouble and her mom is just always at her wit's end, and it's funny. So this is just a really fast, fun read. The mysteries are always pretty solid. I did guess this one, but like I said, the comedy was just top form. It was really funny. Not my favorite setting, but it was, you know, it was still good. Another thriller that I read this month was The Escape Room by Megan Goldin. I don't think I've read anything by this author before. Basic premise, we have these 4 Wall Street like superstars. They're all rising stars in their financial firm, and they are told to go to this escape room to do like a team building exercise, and they all show up even though they don't want to because there's some like job cuts on the line. They want to look good, you know, make the boss happy. They show up, they get in the elevator stops, like they're stuck in the elevator, which on its own is already really terrifying for me because I am a little bit on the claustrophobic side. So if you are also claustrophobic, this book will make you feel even more so, because the descriptions of them like crammed in this elevator are definitely very good. So while you are reading this, you are also going back into time with another character's perspective, like one of their co-workers, and kind of looking at these 4 characters trapped in the elevator through somebody else's lenses, and you realize, like a lot of thrillers, they're not the nicest people. They're very cutthroat. They will do anything to secure their career and to be the top dog. And despite this though, I feel like I sympathized a lot with the characters. Like they all had some redeemable qualities, which I did like. And again, they're in this like elevator, and they think this is part of the escape room exercise. So like, okay, let's start looking around for clues, and they start to find little clues, and they start to realize that somebody's like after them for revenge. So it's like a revenge thriller. My biggest critique for this is that I wanted more from the ending. I wanted a little more detail, a little more information about the aftermath of everything. I just, sometimes I feel like thrillers and mysteries, they wrap up so quickly and I don't get that final closure that I really want. So that was my biggest critique, but otherwise I flew through this. The characters were all interesting. They were easy to identify after a while with their voices and everything, and I liked the back and forth. I feel like it didn't, sometimes when you're going back and forth between multiple timelines, it can kind of kill the pacing or the suspense from one of the plot lines, but this one did a really good job of going back and forth, but like enhancing the suspense from both sides. So I liked that, found it very interesting. I love the setting because I love escape rooms, and the elevator was just really creepy because you could just feel the walls like coming in on you. So definitely a really good, like, you know, fast-paced, hearts-pounding kind of thriller. A cozy mystery that I DNF'd was Play the Fool by Lina Chern. I took this out from my library for Summerween. I was so excited for this because the main character is actually a tarot card reader, which is kind of a unique premise for a cozy mystery, and the cover is very dark and different. And I will say a few things about this. One, the main character drove me crazy. I liked her at first, but about halfway through I just couldn't take it anymore. That's where I DNF'd it. Two, it's like I don't know what her motivation was for solving this really. Like she was friends with the person, but I don't know, I just didn't feel like the motivation was there. I don't know why she was so interested in it. And she just got on my nerves, because at first you're looking at this character and she's kind of failed at adulting. She's got 2 siblings, they're both like the Goldin children, they have great careers, like they have relationships, and she's in her 30s and she's just kind of working in a mall, like reading tarot cards, not doing great financially or like in terms of relationships. She's just kind of floundering. She hasn't figured out what she wants to do with her life. I think a lot of us can relate to that. So you're there, and one day she's reading tarot cards, a client comes in, she reads his tarot card reading, and she notices on his phone that there's a picture of her friend who appears to be murdered, which freaks her out, obviously. And she starts to follow him and starts to try to report this to the police, but they're not listening to her, of course, because she doesn't have any evidence that her friend's dead. Her friend is missing, but she can't really prove it. Her friend is somebody who works at the mall, at a nearby store, and she realizes as she's kind of investigating that she really doesn't know much about her friend's past. So it's kind of interesting going along with that, but I just didn't like it. I didn't like the interactions with the police. I wasn't that interested. I feel like this mystery was also, I believe it was supposed to be cozy. At least I found it to be described as cozy on multiple sources, but it really wasn't that cozy. It was pretty grisly. There was definitely some cursing. It wasn't as clean as most cozy mysteries are, so keep that in mind, but I just didn't love the writing style. I didn't love the character. I just it just wasn't a hit for me. One that was an absolute hit for me was The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. So this is described as Clue meets the British Bake Off. And I love baking, and I am obsessed with Clue. So this was everything I wanted and more. This is a mystery. It's very much it's just a classic mystery. It's not cozy necessarily, although it does have a lot of cozy elements with the baking and stuff, but it takes place in a castle with this woman who, it's her family's castle, and she's hosted this baking show for a long time, and she invites people to this yearly competition on the grounds of her big castle. Amazing setting, and people will kill to get into this. So we have all these different characters that we're following around their perspectives, but it's kept really neat. You can really keep the storyline straight. I didn't have a hard time with confusing who was who. There were very distinct writing styles for each character, which I appreciated, but you're reading from different people's perspectives. You're going through the baking competition, and there appears to be some kind of sabotage to the competition. Some things are going wrong, and then somebody is found dead, and chaos ensues. But they have to keep going with the baking show, This is very much a Clue feeling mystery. You very much have this. There was even a sitting, there was even a billiard room, and there was the sitting room. There were all the rooms a Clue mystery, and it was just so fascinating. Each of the characters had their own really great motives for why they would have wanted this person gone. It was so satisfying. It was just a really amazing mystery. I put some parts together, other parts completely shocked me. It was so well written. It was so interesting. If you love Clue or the British Bake Off, please pick this up. It was one of, I think this could make my top books for the year. It was a really strong read. I just adored it. Another one I read for Summerween was In the Hall with the Knife, a Clue mystery by Diane Peterfreund. This is a young adult retelling of the Clue board game. Speaking of Clue, and we basically have all the characters in the original Clue board game, but they're now teenagers, or they're at this prep school, so you kind of have a little bit of a dark academia vibe to it, and they are snowed in. Most of the students have left the campus, but they are trapped on the campus. They're snowed in, and there's a couple other students with them, and they have some staff, but it's just mostly these Clue members. You're going from perspective to perspective, so you do juggle 6 different points of views in this, which can be tricky, I think, for an author to pull off well, but this one, it was pulled off well, so I was just really pleased with this. It's a very fast read because it is young adult and it's under 300 pages. I have already purchased book 2 for this because I loved this so much that I immediately went and ordered book 2. I was so impressed. I thought it was just such a fun retelling of the Clue characters, fleshing them out. Each of them did have their own interesting storylines. We still have some cliffhangers on some of the subplots for the story. I'm excited to learn more about the characters and their backstories. I loved Scarlet and Plum. They were just these very conniving characters, where Scarlet's the social queen and Plum's kind of the academic king, and they kind of plot together to both be the top of everything in their respective interests, and it's hilarious. I love them. I thought Orchid was super interesting. Her and Green, I have very interesting storylines that I'm really excited to learn more about. I was a little disappointed with Peacock. I felt like she was very annoying. Maybe she's supposed to be. That could definitely be the case, but I feel like she was really annoying. She was like the super athlete, and she just got on my nerves like crazy. But overall, really enjoyed this. If you are a Clue fan, if you like a fun, fast-paced mystery, this was fun. Again, it is young adult, so I thought the ending was pretty easy to call, but just for a good time, I really enjoyed this. It was fun. And Mustard really grew on me, which surprised me because he's never been my favorite character in the Clue game. But his take, like their take on Mustard in this was really good. So I'm just excited. I love this. The cover, absolutely amazing. I'm so excited for this. And I love what it says. The game is on. No one is safe. So absolutely just a fun read. So I read Hard Dough Homicide by Olivia Matthews this month. This is the second book in the Spice Isle Bakery mystery series. I was disappointed because book 1 was a 5-star read for me, and that is It's Trapped Behind Everything. That is Against the Current. I loved this book. I read this at the beginning of the year. 5 stars. I was so excited for book 2, but it was just a 3-star read for me. It wasn't bad. But after this book, it was kind of a letdown. Basically, main character is Lindsay Matthews, and she opens this Spice Isle bakery with her family. It's a West Indian bakery. It's in the neighborhood, the little Caribbean neighborhood in New York, and she opens it with her family. Her family is lovely. The characters in this are great. Lindsay's a recovering pushover, people pleaser. She's really learning to stand her ground and be an excellent businesswoman. I love it. Her family relationships, great. In the second book, she's basically hosting along with her family this retirement dinner for her mom's old boss, who is a principal at a school, and she's very heavily disliked by everybody. Nobody likes this principal. They end up dying during the retirement dinner, which takes place in the bakery, and it's one of those things where it's somebody there because she was poisoned while at the dinner, but nobody else's food was contaminated or so it wasn't like an accident where the food was bad or anything. So somebody there had to have poisoned her. So I liked that element. I liked a good kind of locked room mystery, but I feel like it took forever for the mystery to really get going. We had the inciting incident early on, but it took forever for Lindsay to really get involved with the sleuthing. I was like, come on girl, go sleuth, let's go, let's do this. But she just took a while to kind of get into it, and I was waiting, and that was a little frustrating. I also just feel like the mystery wasn't as strong as book 1. But overall, the setting, the characters, the food descriptions, some of the subplots that are developing were all really fun. I'm still looking forward to book 3. It is coming out at the very, very end of the year. But I will say book 2 just wasn't as strong in my opinion. One that was a really strong hit from a series I love is Killer Research by Jenn McKinley. This is book 10 or 11 in the Library Lovers mystery series. It's an amazing bookish cozy mystery. It takes place on in Massachusetts on the coast. So lots of beautiful sea vibes to it. It's really enjoyable. Our main character in that is also Lindsay. Funny enough, I was just thinking, I was like, wait, did I get that wrong? No, her main character in the Library Lovers mystery series is Lindsay. She's a library director, and basically she has a staff member named Miss Cole, and Miss Cole is maybe in her 60s or so. She's been at the library forever. She's lived in that town forever, and she's decided recently to run for mayor because she's just sick of the mayor. And she's like, I'm gonna, I know everyone in this town, I'm gonna run for it. She's got a really good chance. Well, one day, her and the Crafternoon Club, which is a club that Lindsay and some other library gals run, where they talk books while doing crafts at the library, and they're going to Miss Cole's car to get out these I want to say signs, to advertise her for mayor, and they find a body in Miss Cole's car, and obviously Miss Cole has no idea why there's a body in her car. The person has been murdered, and the police are now kind of running Miss Cole's name through the mud as they investigate, which is awful for the upcoming election. And the other mayor, the current mayor, is really snooty, and he's like, well, she's a murderer, he's a jerk, we don't like him. And the mystery was great. Miss Cole is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite characters in the Library Lovers mystery series. She is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I love seeing her character development throughout the series. I definitely recommend reading this series in order if you can. But this was just a solid mystery. It was such a satisfying mystery. I was able to piece it together right at the end, but it was such a good reveal. I just wanted to applaud. It was great. I highly recommend this series. It's always been a hit. I've never really had a bad read from this series. And if you like a bookish cozy, I would highly recommend it. Alright, but last but not least, we do have a thriller, and that is The House in the Pines by Anna Reyes. And this was definitely a slow burn thriller, but to me at least, it was so worthwhile. Absolutely so incredibly worthwhile. We basically have this young woman, and when she was like a teenager, she was with one of her friends who was like her best friend. They did everything together, and her best friend was talking to this man named Frank, and the main character is convinced that Frank has something to do with her friend's death because her friend just collapses unexpectedly and just dies. And there's no explanation because Frank didn't lay a finger on her. So you have no idea how he did it or if he did it. But our main character is obsessed with the idea that he did. And recently she has seen a video where another young woman in town dies in the same way that her friend does. And Frank is there again. And again, he doesn't touch her, he doesn't lay a finger on her, but she dies in like the same way. So weird. So she goes back home, and she is also struggling. I want to give a trigger warning. She is heavily struggling with drugs throughout this book, like withdrawals and all of that. So definitely keep that in mind if that would make you uncomfortable. Keep that in mind. And she goes back home, and she's staying with her mom, who's a nurse, which is kind of interesting with the whole withdrawal thing, like corresponding at the same time. And she starts to really try to remember more because she's having a lot of lapses in her memory from that time, and you're kind of going back and forth between scenes from the past and the future. I do not want to give much away, but this was like a fabulous like psychological thriller. It was so good. The ending, I sat there and I just had to like take it in. It was really good. Absolutely terrified me. The explanation was something that I'm personally like very weary of, so I found that to be interesting. And it's just, yeah, you absolutely gotta read it. I highly recommend it. It's very interesting, very much a slow burn, but very big on the payoff. So I really enjoyed this. It was really well explained. It was really like in your head, and you're just not sure at any point, like, can you trust the main character, like, because she's going through the withdrawals and she's having these memory lapses, and she's just kind of like all over the place and very confused in general, even when she's not like withdrawing from anything. So it's very much like an unreliable narrator. Just really good. I would recommend it. Anyways, that is the end of this reading wrap up. I feel like I'm losing my voice. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. Please let me know, what did you read this month? What would you recommend? What would you not recommend? And don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new. I do post new mystery and like book content every week on this channel, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!